So this story is called On Loss, about emotions and being able to talk about things as well as recovery. So life's a funny thing. You know, they say it's short and sweet, but honestly, towards the end of things, it can feel drawn out. It can feel like it takes an eternity. Now, that's not just for the person suffering through it, but also for, people supporting them and seeing them through to the end. My family hasn't dealt with loss a lot. My mom's side, we lost a cousin of mine unexpectedly, and my dad's side has never faced loss before. August 2018, I lost my uncle on my mom's side to liver cancer. Now, the silver lining of this, if there is one, is that he was prepared for it. We had the time to be prepared for it too, so it wasn't a shock. My uncle was the epitome of energy, the epitome of jokes and laughter and always being snarky. He loved the Cowboys, and we always poked fun at him for that. And he carried that with him throughout his journey in battle against cancer. And he was so strong. And he actually wanted us to take him to the beach as his last favor or request. And so we got the entire family together to Ocean City. It's not the best beach, but it's the beach that we went to as kids together. And so he wanted that as his final thing. He lived with his sister or my aunt towards the end. 24/7, we'd have family over at that house, just be it to cook things, to fill the house with laughter, with jokes and poking fun at each other, just as he'd want to hear. And although he wouldn't be present with us necessarily, he would be in the other room just hearing it. And so we'd speak a little louder, make a couple more jokes than we normally would, just so that he could hear and be there. And even though he wasn't physically able to respond, we knew that he was intaking things, he was hearing things throughout the entire process. It was late in the morning, about 3 o'clock when he passed, but the moment he passed, it wasn't this overwhelming feeling of sadness. It was a bit more like relief, He'd been going through this for months, maybe 3 months of just agony, just laying in bed. And you see his face get skinnier, his body swell up from the drugs, taking morphine and whatnot. And so when it was over, it was just a breath of relief. In the coming weeks, I was leaving for work, and my mom was on the stoop in the backyard, and she was watching a video that she took of my uncle towards the end of his days, just as a way to remind herself and hear his voice and see his reactions to whatever she was saying, but she was crying. And as I'll get to, it's atypical in Asian culture or male culture to express emotions like that, at least in my family, from my experience. And so this was my first moment to act on it. And so I was on my way out, put my backpack down, sat down next to her, and just held her. And it was a big moment for both of us, and it brought us closer together. So August 2018 was my uncle. November 2018, my grandfather passed away. It was a similar situation, except now on my dad's side, that has never experienced loss. So they're novice to this. They're not used to it at all. So my entire family on my dad's side came to our house because our grandparents live with us. And 24/7, I'm telling you, hand on foot, helping my grandpa out. And so it's interesting because the way that my family expresses emotions, at least on my dad's side, is to furiously clean things and furiously make dishes of food and anything really to avoid thinking about what happens next. We have a camera in the top right of my grandfather's room. So people around the world, because we have family in France, we have family in Florida, California, Indiana, and we could just have a live stream always of my grandpa. After the nurse had given him the proper dosage of morphine, that his breathing started to slow down. And I was upstairs in my room, and I was working on my laptop, and my dad said, "Hey, you should come downstairs. Gung's heart is faint. Don't tell Chris, my brother." And I was like, okay. And so I immediately called Chris. This is not something that you can hide from someone, and I would... Chris is at school right now. At that time, he was so incredibly stressed with school and other factors in his life that my dad thought it wouldn't have been the best idea to have him be even more stressed and rush home. But I had a hunch that this was it. So I called Chris, and he made it with 30 minutes to spare to say his goodbyes, to hold him. And it was in this moment that everyone was starting to realize the depth of the moment, the weight of what's about to happen. And it was in the last 30 seconds that I saw my father cry. And it was an intense moment where all of his siblings were in the room, and me and my brother were in the room, and some in-laws were in the room, and just saying goodbye and making our peace with it. And I would receive texts minutes before from my cousin who's in Oregon asking what's going on. There's a lot of commotion in the room right now, because this was something that was on everyone's computer 24/7. And it was in that moment that I realized that it's not natural to suppress these things. The reason people were reacting in this way is because they had it held up for so long. And once the funeral folks got him, it was back to before. And we deconstructed the room, because it became a little hospital over time. Without words, everyone put the furniture back, they set the TV back up, they put all the things away in drawers as their way of coping, as their way of pushing it off for those 15 minutes longer that it didn't happen. The moment he passed, my dad said, "Alex, go get your mom from work." So I was tasked with driving to my mom's work, picking her up. And I was stone-faced the entire way until I was stone-faced in the house until I got into my car, and that's when I let it out. And as soon as I got to the store to pick up my mom, back to stone-faced. It was weird. I only allowed that moment for me to be vulnerable. So although there was the shared emotion of relief, same with my uncle, my father's side handled it very differently. So emotion, as I said before, I think is something that is hard to express in Asian cultures. It's about being vulnerable to others. And this is my first time talking about this, and it's being filmed, and it's being posted to the internet, but it's all in, the name of being more open, being able to talk about things, and I think that's healthy. And I'm not sure what it is. Maybe it's avoiding being like sissy or weak, but that's something that we need to change as a culture.